Previously on Chaos Head Noah. Alright, I should check the name. The transfer student's name, according to her student handbook, is Orihara Kuzue. Kozupi.
まさか。
だから最初からそう言ってたのらコズピーなの。
Could this somehow not be a delusion? This voice is her?
西条くん大丈夫？
The transfer student, her head still hanging downward, glanced up at me and pointed at my face. Her fingertip was trembling.
タラリーって出てる。
I touched my hand to my face. The ball on my nose was slimy. My nose was bleeding. The transfer student offered me a tissue. I took it from her and wiped away the blood, but I was still feeling very uneasy. You and me both.
聞きたいな。先週の西条くんがテレビに出てた時のこと。
I was being held captive against my will by a very, 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 very scary spider. Even if I told you, you wouldn't believe me.
それ決めつけ？うぐー。
Yes, but it's a reasonable assumption.
コズピーはあの時下にいたんだよ。
Were you now? Down below.
スクランブル交差点、ハチ公口の改札前、ちょうど通りかかって。あの時ずっと声聞こえてたよ。西条くんの声。ナナミさんを助けたい、助けなきゃって聞こえたよ。
As if it were running along her hand, light suddenly appeared in the air. No, it wasn't light. It was closer to lines. If I were to describe it, it'd be similar to wireframe. Callous rays of light intersected in a seemingly empty space, before eventually forming a shape akin to that of a snowboard. And then, several streaks of blue light, more fiercely brilliant than any of the wireframe lines, ran across the entirety of it. Nobody's gonna see this, right? Kozupi then clasped her open hand. Immediately following this, what had originally been wireframe, appearing as though a texture had been applied to it, transformed into a massive, solid, seemingly cold to the touch metal plank.
ディスオード。
君は剣を持っているね。
You know the D swords.
どうしてわかるの？
君のような子を他にも知っているから。
Kozue raised her hands above her head and withdrew her sword where she stood. She thrust the end of the blade toward the man.
この剣が見えるの？
見えないよ。
じゃあどうしてわかるの？
おじさんが悪い人だからだよ。すまない。
どうして謝るの？
おじさんのせいなんだ。
どうしておじさんのせいなの？
忠告しかできないから。動き出してしまったから。もうおじさんには止める術がないから。
そういえばあのおじさん 別れ際にこんなこと言ってたのら。
And what's that?
君たちは特別な存在だ。中でも一番特別なのは、その目、誰の目を産み落とした少年。
The boy who birthed whose eyes are those eyes.
らしいんだって。
I didn't know what to say. What the hell?
西条くん、心当たりあるの？
いや別に。
嘘ら。心は正直なんだよ。西条くんは今、ものすごーく関係ありますって考えてる。
God damn it. This is exactly what I was talking about. It sucks trying to think when she's listening to every thought I have.
なんか怖い顔になってる。
Not as scary as you, I'm sure.
その目、誰の目って西条くんが最初に考えたの？
I use that phrase quite a bit, but only ever in my own head. They barely even meant anything, so what the hell were they doing in all those places? Was there an actual reason behind it hidden in there somewhere? One that would reveal why Shogun was so persistent in coming after me? Maybe the homeless guy had some clues I could work with. I imagined he was still somewhere in the city, carrying around his cryptic sign. I should look for him. So I look for him. Then what? I paused for a moment, then shook my head in denial of what I'd been thinking. What good would it do to look for him? It was a whole lot more likely to just put me in harm's way. For all I knew, the guy was one of Shogun's minions, only there to lure me into some horrifying trap. So if I just cruised my way over to the guy, there was a strong chance it would just trigger another request. I didn't know if I could handle that. I was already sick to death of all the pain and terror I'd been going through lately. And my suspicions didn't end at the homeless guy. I was even suspicious of Kozupi. What was with all the mysterious characters accumulating around me? You're special! I was dying for an answer. You're special! Thinking about it all just wore me out. Being special is tiring, I can admit that. Or rather, agree. It sucked ass only half understanding what was going on. I didn't have the strength to look into it myself. Because none of these people were normal in the slightest. Grappling with those feelings of bitterness, I took one last bite of my thawing crunchy coon.
当たりだ。
I win!
普通に生活していきたいなら私の忠告を聞け。これはお前たちの命に関わる話だ。
It didn't look like Sena was joking. Then again, she wasn't the type to joke anyway.
ましてや西条、お前はディソードなしでリアルブートした。本来ならそんなことできるはずがないんだ。リラックの海にはディソードを通してしか干渉できないんだから。お前は普通じゃない。奴らに目をつけられてもおかしくない。
奴らって。
ギガロマニアックスの力を悪用しようとしている連中がいる。
それって将軍？
知らない。誰だそれ。
Kozupi, did Sena just lie?
ついてないよ。
西条、将軍とは誰だ。
匠さん、ほら真ん中。
いや僕は。
セナさん、横見てたらダメです。
私はこういうのは。
コズピ ピーだって初めてなのだ。ドキドキ。
Without once consulting us, Kosupi followed the instructions on the screen and pushed button after button. And before Sena and I could get mentally ready, mentally and physically, a voice came from the screen.
はい、ポーズ。
First-timers, Gigalomaniac trio. In the picture we had taken, neither of the D-swords were visible. And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Chaos Head Noah. So, Takumi. Looks like we got some new friends. One of them is a bit mentally unstable, but I mean, hey, maybe we can act as a restraining bolt for her or something like that. Keep her from following those homicidal tendencies of hers to their logical conclusion, lest she winds up causing a lot of headaches for both herself and everybody around her, us especially. I'm not worried about Sena, though. She seems pretty level-headed in general. But yeah, Orihara, I'd keep her on a short leash. Find an effective way here to soothe her anger whenever she gets mildly annoyed by somebody or something. Mildly annoyed enough to whip that big boy out that she's got. I am still curious to know what exactly made her this mentally unstable to begin with. Because clearly, I mean, I'm kind of with Takumi on this one. Something must have broke this poor girl at some point earlier on in her life. And I have a sneaking suspicion it is honestly pretty depressing, whatever it is. I'm sure maybe a few episodes down the road we might find out, but only time will tell, I suppose, when that'll actually happen. But yeah, I'm curious. With a small wave and a smile, Kosubi disappeared in the direction of the station ticket gates. Sena and I watched her go. I would prefer not to be alone with Sena. Would you rather be alone with Orihara? But it seemed like she wasn't in a leaving Shibuya mood yet. Maybe she was planning to start wandering around the area like she normally did. Well, she probably is still looking for errors. I wanted to head back home as soon as possible, but there was one thing I had to ask the resident Gigalomaniac Brainiac before I did. Honestly, out of the three of you, you should just call her the Brainiac. Even when I tried talking to her, the stern expression remained on her face. It was a lot better when Kosupi was here. But man, would it kill her to be a little more approachable? I assumed she'd heard me, so while my heart might have been beating out of my chest, I asked my question anyway.
コズピーの心の声もギガロマニアックスの能力なの?
I didn't expect her to answer me. I expected her to just hit me with a condescending heh and just leave it at that. I think she'd go a step further and just not give you any verbal response whatsoever. Or at least that's what I would have assumed she did, but clearly that's not what we're getting. Sena glanced at me once, then shifted her eyes toward the Jumbotron resting above the scrambled crossing.
心の声はいわば妄想だ。
She replied.
梢はそれを他人のデッドスポットに送り込んでいるに過ぎない。仕組みはさっき説明したものと何も変わらない。
But the dead spots are located within that little tiny spot in the human eye, right? How the hell do you hear things through your eyeballs? Now there's a thinker.
送り込んだ粒子を映像ではなく音声に変換しているんだ。 電話と同じだな。そして梢から心の声という妄想を送り込まれたことで、お前と梢の間で周囲共通認識が成立したんだ。テレパシーで会話しているように思えるが全然違う。
I think I understand. So, in a nutshell, she just converts the particles that she's sending out through her delusions into my dead spot into something resembling an audio signal, which is what my brain interprets it as. And likewise, she's also able to do the same thing in reverse with me through mutual recognition, as you call it. That's generally how it works, if I understand this right.
だったら僕の心の声はどうしてコズピーに届いたの？
I hadn't sent any delusions to Kozupi's dead spots. So if what Sena was saying was true, it should have only been a one-way conversation starring Kozupi. Again, I suspect it has something to do with mutual recognition, as she puts it. At least that's what you call it, yeah? Yeah. And yet, despite that, we'd had a conversation with just our inner voices. Several, even.
ギガロマニアックスは他人の妄想を見ることができる。梢は特にその能力が高い。他人が垂れ流す妄想をほぼ強制的に見せられていると言ってもいい。
That sounds kind of rapey. See? Delusions. Was such a thing possible? I definitely couldn't do that. And if I couldn't, then I probably wasn't actually a Gigalomaniac. No, going by what little evidence I've seen so far, I think there are hints showing you to be a Gigalomaniac Rex, if anything. Rar. Suddenly, Sena looked farther away from me, her gaze shifting from the Jumbotron to the crowds of people walking through the scrambled crossing.
ギガロマニアックスとなったものは誰だろうと一度は壊れているんだよ。
壊れたって何が？
心がだ。梢は東京に来る前、奴らに追い詰められて心を壊した。
And so, Sena began to tell me about what Kozupi had experienced before she transferred schools. She began by saying that she had seen it as in an image, one that she'd witnessed back when she first met Kozupi. Ever since she was a little girl, Kozue had possessed the peculiar ability to view the minds of others. Despite this affliction, Kozue managed to live a somewhat peaceful life by approaching her power in her own way, hiding it from others. Her change had begun with mirrors. Upon entering high school, Kozue began to see her reflection in mirrors more and more frequently throughout her daily life. At first, she believed it was only coincidence. It'd only occur about twice a day. But as time went by, the frequency gradually increased. Kozupi would encounter people holding mirrors more than 10 times in a single day. None of these encounters were particularly suspect, just people passing by her on the street holding a mirror, or a classmate fixing her makeup in the bathroom. However, regardless of whether these occurrences were mere coincidence or indeed intentional, Kozue would almost always see her own reflection in the mirrors. Eventually, all those who held the mirrors began to make noises akin to suppressed laughter. In their minds, they called out to Kozue with the words, "Who are you?" In the classroom, on campus, en route to school, while shopping, everywhere Kozue went, these people would appear. It was not a specific person perpetrating it. It was a different person every time. But, in Kozue's eyes, anyone who possessed a mirror began to look suspicious. Anyone who would suppress their laughter around her began to look suspicious. Before long, even those without mirrors began to look suspicious, and Kozue began to face hallucinations in which they would all but call out to her with, "Who are you?" I wonder if this stuff that all these people she was apparently running into, since there are a variety of people, including students, I can't help but wonder how many of them might have been mind-controlled by something, akin to what we saw with those victims in the group dive. Because if that's the case, then, well, it would explain why all these people were suddenly showing up to harass her like this, because clearly whoever or whatever was causing it, they already identified her as a quote-unquote Gigalomaniac, excuse me. I'll get the pronunciation right at some point. Although that does raise the question how they were able to identify her to begin with. She became nearly neurotic, and the voices present in the back of her head refused to leave. One day, Kozue mumbled something to herself in the mirror.
お前は誰?
Upon saying those words, Kozue felt an immense sense of fear, one that told her she truly did not know the answer. A girl with the same face as hers addressed her from the other side of the mirror.
お前は誰?
Ever since that day, Kozue could no longer speak, and she was unable to look at herself in the mirror. Even still, the question of "who are you" would continue to assault her. She did not even know whose voice it was inside her head anymore. And due to another facet of her peculiar ability, much akin to a broken fax machine, Kozue would receive the voices of other people indiscriminately, regardless of if she desired to or not. She herself had no say in the matter. And thus, Kozue's mind was torn to shreds. One day in her second year of high school, Kozue was cleaning the classroom at the end of the day. As she tidied up, 3 female classmates of hers, all with mirrors in hand, were whispering something among themselves. Mirrors, suppressed laughter. Then came the question, "Who are you?" Had it truly been the inner voice of one of her 3 classmates? Or had it been a hallucination on Kozue's part? It did not matter. The reflection in the mirror found its way to Kozue's eyes, both of which were trembling in fear. For a moment, Kozue's vision blurred. Had it been intentional or a coincidence? It did not matter. At that very moment, Kozue's mind, after facing endless strain for well over a year, finally broke. The event accompanied by the sound of glass shattering. Upon realizing this, Kozue screamed from the deepest depths of her lungs. Out of the corner of her eye, Kozue saw her D-sword and took hold of it for the very first time. She then proceeded to attack her 3 classmates. The hands of the 3, each of which were holding the mirror, were then severed by the real-booted D-sword in less than an instant. Well, I knew it was going to be tragic and unfortunate, her backstory. But, I mean, given her abilities, I guess I'm honestly not really surprised by it. It's more or less kind of what you could logically expect it to be, I guess. Although the mirrors and the question, who are you, are most definitely something I wasn't expecting, and a very interesting element. I also find it interesting, thinking about now, that it's a question, similar to whose eyes are those eyes. So with Takumi, we have whose eyes are those eyes, and with Kozupi, we have who are you. I have a suspicion that these two questions both originate from a similar source. But that doesn't really jive with what the homeless man was saying towards the last chapter in 2, in regards to the origin of the phrase, whose eyes are those eyes. Apparently, the source of that is from a boy. Unless the boy who's originated that phrase is also the same source as of the question, who are you, then it's possible that these two questions do come from two different sources. Even if the circumstances behind their manifestation seem somewhat similar. Whose eyes are those eyes, seemingly appearing in various different locations, even in places where it logically shouldn't appear, yet it does. Like Takumi's friend saying it in random sentences, it appearing in various image boards, it showing up at some of the new gen murder crime scenes. Case in point, the question, who are you, showing up in both whispers and eventually in people's minds, like it did with Kozupi. I don't think it's a coincidence how these two phrases seem to manifest to both Takumi and Kozupi respectively. Something is very intentionally screwing with both of them. That's what my gut is telling me. I mean, we pretty much confirmed that with Takumi for sure, especially given our recent run-in with Darth Spider, but Kozupi, I would not be surprised if it definitely is true for her too. According to the minimum attendance chart, I didn't have to go to school today. But despite that, I was heading there anyway for one reason, and one reason only. To see Rimi. I doubt she's going to be here today either. I had no doubt that the Dokuns in class would make fun of me, just like they always did. It would definitely suck, but if it meant I could see Rimi, I could endure it. As I passed through the school gate, I thought back to yesterday. When we parted, Sena had made it a point to say something.
お前が望むと望まないとにかかわらず、もしこれ以上踏み込んでくるような、負を正にするぐらいの強い意識を持つんだな。中途半端な気持ちじゃ、妄想に食われるだけだぞ。
I didn't want to get involved in anything that sounded dangerous, so I opted not to ask anything else. Besides, I still didn't know how far I'd have to go to get my hands on a D-sword. I was no hero, just a useless piece of shit that couldn't even protect his own sister. But it was also possible that Shogun could show up again. He seemed to be playing with me like it was some kind of a game after all. Maybe he'd feel like sending me another quest soon. Just the thought alone terrified me. I tried to grasp my D-sword, but even that was just to protect myself from him. Without that sword, how could I ever hope to escape his evil clutches? Maybe if Rimi was by my side, like she said she would be, but she'd been absent from school lately, which worried me. What if she'd been taken hostage, just like Nanami? Was there anyone out there who could help me? There is Ayase. Maybe. They would have to be someone with a D-sword. Ayase couldn't because she was injured. Never mind. Sena definitely wouldn't. And why is that? And Kosuke was a bit... No, she was fairly weird. But, given the options we have available, I guess thinking about it now, she is probably our best shot. As, as unsettling of a proposition as that is. My head looking squarely at the floor, I entered the classroom. Before taking my seat, I took a quick look around. I looked toward Rimi's seat first, and I bet it's as empty as your heart. Empty. No, not your heart, your head. Either way, yeah. Knew it. Empty. Like your head. Was she taking off today off too? Was it really that simple? Was she really just taking time off? I began to feel anxious. I wanted to see her. I wanted to see that cheerful face. Next, I looked over at Kozupi's desk. And here's our new best friend! She was in her seat, face down and huddled up. I was reminded of what Sena had told me yesterday. It now made sense why Kosupi was always like that.
Ohayo, Takumi-san!
Morning to you too! Morning, Kosupi. I didn't make eye contact, but I greeted her with my inner voice. The female Dokuns were watching me, smirking. Cunts. It was no different than yesterday. They all already labeled me as that otaku freak who said he was psychic and made an ass of himself on TV. And that label wasn't going away anytime soon. You're unfortunately right about that. The male Dokuns didn't seem to have arrived yet. It was pretty common for them to skip first period, and that was fine by me. Oh boy, we're surrounded by estrogen! Despite the men on the right to the screen here saying otherwise. But it's okay, Takumi, I'll believe you this time. I took my seat. But when I did, that voice called my name.
Taku, ohayo?
Oh? Well, holy shit! I didn't think you'd be here today either. Color me surprised. Anyway, I'm on to you now! I know you actually really do want to kill me. Takumi was right about you all along. You really are Shogun's underling, so to speak. Maybe. Not 100% sure of that yet, but you're at least working with him. You traitor. You deceived me. Shocked, I looked up in a panic. And there she stood, right in front of my very eyes. Rimi. With a hint of shyness, she gave me a short wave.
久しぶり。
Yeah, no kidding.
リミ。
It wasn't an illusion. There was a definite presence. She was breathing. Her hair was rustling. She was blinking. She was right there. She was right there. Here. I felt a twinge in the back of my nose. A tightness squeezed within my chest. I felt like I was going to cry. I still hadn't sat down. I'd just frozen with my head hanging down. I was so happy. I'd gone to see her again.
ちょっとタク、どうしたの？もしかして泣いてるの？
Because you kept breaking your promise. That's why. Even a freaking hard ass like me would end up crying after having someone break their promise to me this long. I frantically shook my head. If my Dokyun classmates found I was crying, they'd start making fun of me all over again. I told myself that I couldn't cry, but the tears kept flowing.
わかった。私に再会できて嬉しいんだ。そうでしょ。
Well, at least you can see it.
なんてね。ちょっと自意識過剰だったかな。
Even as she joked around so cheerfully, all I could do was continue shaking my head. I couldn't even look at her. If I did, I knew I'd really start bawling. Suddenly, someone clapped me on the back. Finally willing to talk to me again, huh, Misami?
Oh, Taku.
Nice seeing you too, my good old friend. It was Misami-kun, with an uncomfortable look on his face. His slap was a lot weaker than usual. Feeling awfully skittish, aren't we? Well, maybe skittish isn't the right word to use here, but either way, you clearly are feeling guilty. And you should be, guilty boy. You abandoned me. Even as I made an ass of myself in front of national television. You certainly had no issue ignoring me before. Why start paying attention to me now all of a sudden? I'm sure that you'll regret talking to me. You'll become the Dokyun's next target, just like me. Yeah, Rimi, Misami-kun, even you. You'd both be better off not associating with an otaku freak like me. A psychic otaku freak like you mean? I'm sorry, that was mean. I remained silent, but Misami-kun forced a smile.
暗いな。朝から新規臭いぜ。
You would be too if you've gone through all the shit I've gone through in the past week or so.
ま、お前はそういうやつだって分かってるけどな。
As harsh as his words were, I didn't get the feeling that he was joking or acting sarcastic. After all, it was pretty common for him to say stuff like that.
そういう大地は朝から無駄に爽やかだね。
無駄にとか言うな。久々に学校来たと思ったらいきなりそれか。
じゃあ嘘くさい爽やかさ。
なたく、この言い草どう思うよ。
I think she's right. I nodded ambiguously. The tears had somehow managed to stop. The usual routine was happening right in front of me. Both of them were completely oblivious to the fact that my standing in class had taken a steep nosedive.
そういえば、岸本のことを聞いたか。
What about Kishimoto?
まだ入院中らしいぜ。怪我は大したことなかったんだけど、精神的にかなり参ってるらしい。いいか、タク。女を落とすのに一番手っ取り早いのは、弱ってる時に優しくしてやることだ。
Well, I mean, I manifested a flower bed out of the ether for her right when she was in her biggest moment of need, so I mean, by that logic, should she and I be soulmates right now?
というわけで俺、本気で岸本の見舞いに行こうかなと思ってんだよね。
大地最低。ブーブー。今度こそ彼女さんに刺されるよ。
お見舞いに行くだけだろ。別にやましいことじゃねえよ。
ほんの数秒前と言ってることが違うし。
そういえばタクって岸本と知り合いだったよな。な、一緒に行ってくんね。
Yes, I know Kishimoto. Pretty much everybody in the school knows Kishimoto now, if they didn't before, somehow. I'm sure. I mean, attempting to jump to your death off the school rooftop, I mean, you'd instantly get a reputation, even if you were a complete nobody prior. Especially if you managed to miraculously survive with minimal injury. It was a typical subject matter for Misami-kun. I thought for sure he was going to ask me about my psychic powers, but when he didn't, it caught me completely off guard. He'll probably ask you about him later. But instead of noticing, Misami-kun went right back to what he was saying. And then we fell into our usual routine. Misami-kun talking and talking, Rimi occasionally butting in with a sharp jab, and me just giving vague responses. Suck it, ladies! I'm still forming my own happiness in spite of your veiled insults. And the fact that it was no different than usual made me happy. Dear God. Are you the mysterious science guy?
The science guy
who's been having all those meetings with those old men in that Nozomi conference room? Not gonna lie, your face is nothing at all like I pictured it in my head. If you're the same person, which I suspect you are. Your hairdo from this angle looks kind of familiar. At the top floor of Nozomi Grove HQ, yep, I think it is. Within the presidential office, Norose Genichi stood near a window, lighting a cigarette ablaze. Norose Genichi. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Nozomi Group. An enormous corporate group with abundant subsidiaries. One that conducted business while being accompanied by licensed approval from the nation itself. A number of those subsidiaries then found success in a variety of business fields, from sales of clothing or groceries to managing sales and imports as a trading company. Norose, who reigned above all as the apex of the group, looked below at the grand view of his castle. His conscious mind, however, was not gazing at the scenery before him. Repeatedly tapping his foot against the floor in agitation, his lips curled in a sneer.
まったく老人たちの相手は面倒ですよ。そう思いませんか。彼らは臆病すぎる。だからこそここまでのし上がってきたとも言えるのでしょうが、利用するにもこうあれこれと横槍を入れられてはいい加減うんざりしてきますよ。現実は悲しいかな。300人委員会の影響力というものを侮ることはできません。ただいずれ近いうちにそのシステムも崩壊する。世界の支配構造は組み替えられる。楽しみですか？私もですよ。ここまで随分時間がかかってしまいました。プロジェクトノア立ち上げからすでに5年余り。
5 years ago, Norose approached his personal desk. The solid desk of natural oak contained few ornaments of any note, adorned only with items one might find in a typical office setting. At the table's edge, however, a single conspicuous object casually lay. Norose grasped the green, strangely designed character in his hand. Upon giving it a single disinterested glance, he promptly discarded it in the waste bin. His narrowed eyes turned to the dim room's interior. The rear of the room, where the moonlight could not reach, housed the slightest hint of another person.
まさか君がギガロマニアックスだとは思いもよりませんでした。どうやら神すらも私の味方をしてくれているようだ。君のサンプルを取らせてもらいますよ。何？怯える必要はありません。私は元医師でしてね。インフォームのコンセントはきちんとしなければ気が済まないたちなのです。そもそもノア2のハードウェアはすでに完成しています。あと必要なのはソフトウェアの方でしてね。
Software.
そのために君たちギガロマニアックスのサンプルが多く必要なのです。正確に言うならば NA シナプスに関するコードサンプル、脳の働きに指令を出す役割を果たしている部位の行動サンプルですよ。コードサンプルには個人差があります。持っている能力が高いギガロマニアックスは NA シナプスもより活性化し、脳のより広い範囲にわたって効果を及ぼします。人間の脳は全体の10分の1しか使われていません。しかしギガロマニアックスは違う。
Okay, synapses. Synapses are sites formed between neurons and other cells that receive and transmit neurotransmitters. Their shape resembles that of hands holding one another, but there is a gap of about 20 nanometers between each synapse. Neurotransmitters move between these gaps, and when doing so, appear almost as if they are floating. Yeah, seems to jive up with what I basically understand of him, yeah.
残りの10分の9の部位も使っていることが分かっています。ギガロマニアックスの頭の中というのは実に興味深い。そのサンプルがノア2にとっていわば CPU の役割を果たすわけです。
So Takumi and the other D-sword wielders, Gigalomaniacs, in other words, you're going to use all of us to help boost and play the role of Noah 2's CPU, huh? So that's why you're gathering all of us.
サンプルが多ければ多いほどノア2の能力は本物のギガロマニアックスに近づき、やがて超えるでしょう。納得してもらえましたか？結構。
Norose nodded in satisfaction, exhaling a cloud of smoke as he returned his view to the scenery below the window. Upon viewing it up close, the Shibuya nightscape was the essence of vulgarity itself, leaving Norose solely with feelings of discomfort. His persistent belief of this remote location, however, was that it was more than adequate. Nevertheless, it would not be long before this nightscape would be a sight never to be seen again. The final experiment of his Project Noah would make sure of that.
世界が生まれ変わる日も近い。
What the hell is that? That's the Froggy that belongs to Nozomi, right? Not Nozomi, Nanami. You know, now that I think about it, we still haven't run into Nanami, haven't we? Where the hell is she? But then again, that may not necessarily be hers. The frog, I mean. But still, yeah, there's... Okay, that's clearly important. I'm not sure what to make of the frog, to be honest. Other than the fact it's just the same thing that that Nanami likes. I keep mixing those two names up. It was lunch break. I usually skipped lunch. I had no one to eat with, and I didn't want to eat alone in the classroom. Recently, Rimi had started asking me to eat with her, but since I was me, I would always get embarrassed and refused in the end. That meant that my usual routine would be to leave the classroom and take refuge in a place I felt comfortable. Sometimes it was the library. Sometimes it was the courtyard. But now that everyone in the school knew my face, there was no place I could go where I could relax. The merciless gazes that pierced through me, the abuse and ridicule that was hurled at me. Today, too, I walked around the school, being exposed to all of it. Eventually, I knew I had no choice but to duck into a private bathroom. But right when I was about to... Well, speak of the little devil herself. There she is. I saw Nanami walking down the corridor, leading to the first-year building. It looked like she was walking alone towards the classrooms. Speaking of Nanami, I hadn't spoken to her since the incident. I've been avoiding her for the entire week. Why? And I've been doing it because I didn't know how to act once I saw her. I put my own life before hers. I was the worst big brother ever. It was only a miracle that Nanami had been released safe and sound. I had nothing to do with it. Maybe Shogun had told her that it was my fault she'd gotten kidnapped. I'm still skeptical that she even was kidnapped. If she had, she would definitely be angry with me. That's not what the nurse said when she apparently came to visit you. Maybe she hated me. Maybe she didn't want to speak to me ever again. That was why I didn't have the courage to go talk to her. But now that I'd seen her, I was starting to worry about her once again. Even after everything. I wonder if I had truly wronged her. I wonder if she had been injured. I wonder if she had been hurt mentally. For a moment, the memory of the hand resurfaced in my head. But I shook my head violently to ward it off. That severed hand, along with the bangle I'd been wearing, and the cell phone I'd been holding, it had all been a delusion. A real delusion. Because the hand had disappeared from the refrigerator. Rather than thinking it somehow sprouted legs and walked away, it was far more reasonable to believe that it had never been there in the first place. No, I think, given what you went through that whole day, I think it's more likely that Darth Spider came and took it. The fact that Nanami was alive and well is proof of that. Before I knew it, I had broken into a run. I was chasing after me. Her figure got bigger and bigger as I approached her. Look out, little one! She hadn't noticed me yet. As she walked, she played with her hair with the fingertips of her right hand. As I ran, I started to call out to her. On her right hand, the hand I was playing with her hair, the sleeve of her uniform ever so slightly slipped down. Suddenly, I was hit with a strange feeling, and I choked back the sound I was about to make. What? bandages? I had seen it. It had been extremely trivial, truly inconsequential feeling. And yet... White. It was white. As if trying to conceal something. A white bandage. It was wrapped around her right wrist. Chapter 8 IR2. Or LR2. Well, that's either a really freaky coincidence or a very freaky not so much a coincidence. Well, Takumi, might you actually be at very least partially right about Nanami getting ruffled up by Darth Spider too, like you were with Rimi? Because if you actually end up being at least partially correct about that, I think at that point I'll have to stop doubting you as much as I do. For real this time. Initiated by Momose, a meeting was slated to be held at Frisia Credit Bureau, a meeting to which Bon was now running nearly half an hour late. You're late! Like the man-child man was late. Momose's angry voice hurled into him as he entered the office. In response to this, Bon gave a minor shrug, then proceeded to walk up to the desk of Frisia's president with an amiable smile on his face. He had not brought any refreshments today, something he was beginning to believe may have been a lapse in judgment.
つばちゃんは
今日は別行動。
若い子をこき使ってバンちゃんは楽してるわけね。
いやいや、俺もちゃんとやってるよ。昨日だって徹夜でいろいろ調べてたんだぜ。おかげで最近の女子高生の生態についてはかなり詳しくなった。
Sounds like very important police work.
あんたね、呆れて物も言えないわ。
で、こうして俺を呼びつけたってことは、あの子と連絡取れたってこと？
今来てるわ。
さすがももちゃん。ちなみに可愛い子かい
Momose promptly smacked Bon over the head, stopping his opportunistic grin in its tracks. The sheer speed with which she had turned her wrist made the slap especially fierce.
いつまでもバカなこと言ってんじゃないわよ、エロ親父。
Can I get an MPH rating on that slap? I'm kind of curious to know just how fast it was.
冗談だって。
Oh, it's alright, Bon. I can speak more than enough stupidity for the both of us on your behalf. Before arriving at the building, Bon had made a private request to Momose. It entailed setting up a meeting between him and a certain person connected to the new gen cases. And this person's a female, huh? Rather than anything work-related, it was merely to satiate a personal curiosity. He was not planning on talking about anything related to the new gen investigations for the time being. And due to his position, Bond could not simply meet with the person on his own, else he would risk drawing the ire of the detectives he was getting ahead of. Momose urged Bond over to a corner of the office. It was a fairly cramped space, almost all of which was already taken up by his shelves, packed full of files. The location was used as a reception area of sorts, and a pair of love seats had been wedged into the only place they could fit. Bond entered the section after Momose, and his eyes landed upon a lone girl sitting in one of the love seats. The girl was wearing a Sume Academy uniform. Her head and shoulders were curved toward the ground, and she looked incredibly haggard. Yase?
ごめんね。お待たせしちゃって。
Oh, Yua! I've been wondering where you were. How you doing? The girl looked up in startlement upon hearing Momose. In the process, her glasses had slipped down her nose a bit, leading her swiftly to readjust them with her finger.
あ、いえ、平気です。
When she saw Bon, her expression turned slightly fearful, before bowing her head in a greeting a moment later. Bon felt somewhat hurt by this. He had made every attempt to look as non-threatening as possible in both bearing and appearance. You haven't tried hard enough. But the girl's reaction made him realize that, despite his best efforts, the ferocity and intimidation particular to detectives was seeping out all the same. There's things seeping out of you all right, but ferocity and intimidation is not among them. Looks like I've still got a lot more practicing to do, he thought with bitter amusement, as he sat across from Yua.
楠木優愛さんだね。
はい。
亡くなったミヤさんの双子の姉。それで間違いないかな。
You have a dead twin? Yua slightly adjusted her posture, then returned a nod. The first New Gen incident, the group dive. Among the 5 high schoolers that had leapt to her death was a girl named Kusunoki Miya. Your sister was part of that?
まあ、そんな緊張しなさんな。
No wonder you're so interested in the New Gen. You want to know what exactly drove your sister to her death.
君を取り調べようなんて思っちゃねえんだ。雑談程度に思ってよ。本題に入る前にちょっと聞いていいかい？ゆあちゃんは妹さんが亡くなったことについてどう思う？
ちょっとバンちゃん。
あ、悪いね。職業病ってやつか。気を使うような言い方できなくってな。ただ気になってたんだ。捜査本部でも話題になってたんだが、楠木美也さんの遺族は奇妙だって。
ばあちゃん。
いえ、いいんです。
Before Momose could rise to her feet over Bon's insensitive comment, Yua stopped her.
私もおかしいって思いますから。
はあ。
集団ライブで飛び降りた5人には自殺する理由なんてなかった。家族や友人はみんなそう主張している。だがミヤさんの家族だけは違った。
How so? Bon took his fan out from his belt and began cooling himself.
何も主張しなかった。あっさり受け入れたって聞いてる。あまりに何も言わなさすぎて奇妙だったってな。なんでだい？
お父さんもお母さんもミヤちゃんが死んでからおかしくなっちゃったんです。
Anguish seeped from Yua's voice.
最初はミヤちゃんの事件の知らせを受けた日はそれでも泣いていたんです。お父さんもお母さんもとても辛そうでした。でも次の日の朝、なぜか2人は楽しそうに笑っていたんです。ミヤちゃんが死ぬ前と全く同じに戻ってたんです。たった1日で。私、わけがわからなくて、2人はミヤちゃんのこと忘れようとしてるんじゃないかって思って。
Or maybe something made them forget Mia?
そうしたらお父さんが笑いながら「お前に妹なんていないよ」って。ミヤちゃんが残した洋服とか靴とかを見せても全然取り合ってくれないんです。それはお前のために予備で買ってあったものだって。そうやってお父さんたちはニュースからも警察の話からも目を背けて記憶からミヤちゃんのことを消し去ろうとしてるんです。
Fascinating. With Mia being one of the victims of the group dive, the first known new gen murder, everyone in her family, but you seemingly forgot all about her the next day. Not only that, your parents actively refuse any contradicting information that showed that Mia even existed, and that Mia shows contradicting information that proved that Mia did in fact exist. I wonder if the same is true for friends and family of the other new gen victims too. If their memories were also tampered with in a similar fashion. Not just the ones with the group dive, but all the later ones too. Was there any follow-up interviews with the other group dive members' families after their initial claims that there was no way that that they wanted to commit suicide? Like, did anybody just check back up on them for more information and notice anything off of them after the fact too?
つまり双子じゃなかったことに。
それで警察にもうちは一人っ子だって言って追い返してたわけか。
私とミヤちゃんは一卵性で見た目は瓜二つなんですけど、あの子は妹は親から嫌われていました。あの子はいつも自分の気持ちを押し殺して私のことを一番に考えてくれていたんです。
As Yua spoke, memories from when Mia had still been alive resurfaced in her mind. Go on. First came a memory of when the two had still been in elementary school. One day, some relatives had brought the girls a single large teddy bear as a present. In contrast to the raw joy Yua displayed, Mia insisted that she did not like stuffed animals, and proceeded to not even so much as look at the plush's way. Both her relatives and parents were upset with Mia for not acting like a child should. But despite Mia's protesting, Yua whispered to her that the two of them could share it. That could be something they could both treasure. However, in response to her sister's kindness, Mia simply said that she did not want it, and that Yua could have it. About a month later, when Yua had grown tired of the teddy bear, she woke up in the night and happened to witness a certain scene. With an incredibly joyful look on her face, Mia was hugging and talking to the bear plushie. That was the first time Yua had ever seen her sister so happy. And from this, she realized that her sister's insistence about disliking stuffed animals had been a lie. Mia had been keeping her own feelings hidden, all for the sake of her older sister. The next day, Yua found a lovely drawing of a bear beneath Mia's pillow. Until her sister had grown tired of the teddy bear, Mia had been hugging and sleeping with the drawing in lieu of it. Things very similar to this happened again and again over all the 18 years, they spent together. For their birthday celebrations, Yua always blew out the candles on the cake. But when Mia was prompted to do it, she would say, "I refuse to do something so ridiculous," angering her parents. Yua advanced to the private high school Sume Academy. Mia, meanwhile, had been misbehaving at school, deliberately scoring low on exams, and therefore moved onto a public high school. Due to the exorbitant fees, their parents would only have been able to afford to send one of them to a private school. No matter how hard Yua tried to let her sister have something, Mia would always gain the upper hand and force Yua to be prioritized. To achieve this end, she even intentionally took a dislikable attitude. What I want to know is why she had such a strong insistence on you reaping every possible benefit, while she just gets nothing or leftovers. Did she loaf herself or something?
ミヤちゃんがいなくなって初めてもっとあの子のために何かできることがあったはずだってすごく後悔して私が代わりに死んであげればよかったしかも挙句に親に存在そのものを忘れられてしまうなんてこんなのあんまりですあんまりにも悲しいです
Yua, having now reached her limit, could no longer squeeze out any more words. She took off her glasses, pressed her fingers against the corners of her eyes, and broke down in tears. Momose sat down beside her and gently rubbed her back.
それでユアちゃんは一人で事件のことを調べていたらしいの。ミヤちゃんに一体何があったのか知るためにね。
そりゃあ大変だったろう。
そして一人の人物を突き止めた。
Takumi?
Huh?
As Momose held Yua's shoulders, she turned her eyes toward Bond.
西條匠くんよ。
なるほどね。
Stroking a stubble on his chin, Bond leaned forward from the sofa.
いつだったか西条と追跡劇をしてたっていう女子高生の話を所轄のデカから聞いたんだが、もしかしてユアちゃんだったりする？
Yua nodded apologetically.
興味あるな。詳しく聞かせてもおうと思ったけどちょっとごめんよ。
With a strained smile, Bond lightly bowed his head to Yua and Momose. Not now, Suwa! But his words had been interrupted by the cell phone in his suit pocket. He swiftly took out the phone and checked the screen. Sua's name was displayed across it. I knew it was you.
もしもし、どうした？
先輩、7番目っす。
Oh boy.
なんだと？
Sua's voice sounded strained. The sounds of investigators frantically scurrying about could be heard through the phone. Sua must have been at the investigation headquarters.
ニュージェネ第7の事件が起きたんすよ。
Bond's eyes opened wide, and his expression turned bitter as his teeth sank into his lip. Sensing the seriousness of the situation from his behavior, Momose and Yua watched the detective with unease.
ガイシャは3人、友人同士らしいっす。
3.
3人とも胴体から体が切断されてて、
What?
それぞれの上半身と下半身を別々に入れ替えて手ぐす、釣りとっすね。それで縫い付けられてたっす。 それと額にそれぞれ Q、D、N って読める傷が。
Dokyun?
何かのメッセージか。
Wait a minute. We were assaulted. Takumi was assaulted by three hooligans. Dokyun is something he refers to normies as. But they weren't in that shape when we woke up. Just that their faces were messed up, right? Are these actually the same thugs?
さあ、そこまでは。それと気になることが。司法解剖の結果分かったんですけど、外車の胴体の切断部はノコギリとか包丁とかそういう刃物で切断されたものじゃないって。
どういう意味だ。
なんか強い力で引きちぎられたそうです。
引きちぎられた。
Bond repeated Sua's words back to him with a low groan, then roughly scratched his head with the handle of his fan. Excuse me.
まるで怪獣だな。あるいは最近流行りの魔法使いとかな。
先輩、それマジで言ってんすか？映画オタクの自分でもさすがにその意見には同意しかねるっす。
単なる例えだ、バカが。映画らさっさと捜査に戻れ。
After barking that order to Sua, Bond ended the call. I need information on the victims, their identities. If they're the same people that attacked Takumi before before we lost consciousness, and those letters are what I think they are, then yeah, this is not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. Especially for Takumi. But wait a minute. We woke up after getting attacked, and we didn't see anything. We didn't see anything of the thugs other than their faces having been messed up. And Kozupi told us that we didn't kill them. Assuming she wasn't lying, then they were probably dealt with after we left the scene. Again, assuming these are the same people that were just killed. And if they are, then the only person I could think of that was responsible was Darth Spider. Because you gotta remember that those thugs referenced a Darth Spider figure, and them wanting these thugs to mess Takumi up prior to Takumi probably turning the tables on them. It was probably Darth Spider or Shogun or whoever you want to call him that did it. That actually did this killing. And if they were torn apart, they weren't hacked by a saw, they weren't, or a knife or anything like that. They were torn apart. Kind of like as though they might have been slashed apart by a big sword, perhaps. And if it's something like that, then I guess we could more or less infer that Darth Spider might actually be a D-sword wielder himself. That would certainly be trouble if that was the case. Because that means we definitely for sure aren't dealing with a garden variety serial killer here. though, given the nature of the murders themselves and how they seem to, in some way, be tied into all the other crazy stuff going on in Shibuya. I guess that should already be pretty obvious. I guess the real question I want to ask here is just, how abnormal is the killer themselves, really? And by that I mean, what are all the tricks that they've got up their sleeve? And what is it ultimately that they're actually trying to accomplish? Now that it was November, I had a feeling that the sun was already setting much earlier than before. By the time Rimi and I started heading home together after school, a faint orange was already staining the sky.
ごめんね。
Despite being silent up until now, Rimi abruptly apologized.
たく、いろいろ大変だったんでしょ。
It was the first time I'd gone home with Rimi in a while. I was genuinely really happy that she'd come back. She'd even been the one to initiate it, saying, "Let's walk home together." Since we only gone home together no more than twice, I'd secretly been worried that it would never happen again. However, that turned out to not be the case.
一緒にいてあげられなくてごめん。
If you really want to make it up to me, buy me pizza and ice cream.
知り合いが例の地震で怪我しちゃって。
In a Saratan figure. Preferably one with tape over her mouth, so I don't have to listen to her speak.
ずっと面倒見てたから。
Even though I hadn't asked, Rimi was kind enough to explain herself to me. Though to be frank, almost all of Rimi's words were going in one ear and out the other. The bandage. The bandage I'd seen on Nanami's wrist at lunch break. It had been burned into my eyes and refused to go away.
もしかして怒ってる？
Well, maybe not mad, but I'm definitely mentally frazzled. In the end, I had failed to say anything to Nanami. I'd been too scared. Even though Nanami was my little sister, even though I was Nanami's older brother, something had just felt unbelievably strange, and I had no idea what it was. The nurse had said that Nanami had no injuries. That hand that Shogun delivered to my base had disappeared from the fridge without a trace. It all had to have been a delusion. But, if that was true, why had Nanami's right wrist been wrapped in a bandage? Though it was possible that I was just overthinking it, and that she'd just gotten burned or stung by something, or got some other stupid minor injury that didn't matter at all. Yeah, that was probably it. That was the most logical answer. You could just find out for sure by just asking her directly if you could just stop being such a damn chicken for a minute. But even now, I was still too scared to check. Even after failing to save her, I was still just pacing around doing nothing, not even trying to talk to her. My very own sister. I'm just sorry, but I mean, I for one am happy to see that he actually does care about her. He does genuinely love her, and that he just is nothing, and that he has some room in his heart for genuine love for his sister, rather than just pure, unadulterated annoyance and disdain. But I just can't help but laugh a little bit on the inside at just how very different his tune has changed towards her ever since the whole run-in with Darth Spider happened. Night and day doesn't even begin to describe it, I think. If only past you could see present you now, Takumi. You'd probably be disgusted with yourself. Maybe. I really was the worst brother ever. No shit, Sherlock.
ねえタク、おーい、もしもーし。怒ってるならそう言ってよ。無視されるのって結構傷ついちゃうな。
Well, now you know a little bit about how I feel. Being completely ignored for over a whole goddamn week. By you! You traitor. I looked over at Rimi, who seemed weirdly disheartened.
あ、
もしかして、私の話聞いてなかった？
Yeah, I haven't been, because you see, the little organ that's supposed to be in the center of my cranium that's used to house all the information I hear and perceive, I can't really hold or maintain the information I receive because there's nothing there inside that cranium. I got it on tape, him saying that all the stuff you were saying was going in one ear and out the other. Like there was nothing there. After hesitating for a second, I nodded. And the moment I did, Rimi jabbed my cheek with her forefinger.
石、てっきり無視されたかと思ったよ。紛らわしいことしない。
Yeah, I agree. Shame you couldn't follow your own advice. Ow. You just jabbed your nail into my cheek.
あ、大丈夫？
Rimi finally stopped poking me, and out came those words I heard so often from her. Words of worry and concern. Words I had heard from Rimi again and again.
お昼ぐらいから顔色良くないよ。元気もないみたいだし。もしかして誰かにひどいこと言われた？
Yeah, the friendly neighborhood spider from outer space. Or rather, unfriendly spider from outer space. Did whatever an unfriendly spider did. And made an absolute spectacle out of me. Look out, here comes Darth Spider.
だったら私に教えて。怒ってきてあげるから。
She was acting like an older sister, or guardian even. Rimi was just a hopeless meddler. No, the only real hopeless one here is you. Well, that had been obvious from the moment she'd given an otaku freak like me the time of day. I was grateful to her for being worried about me. Before now, I'd either bottled up my worries deep inside, or posted them anonymously on @channel. Because letting out all your personal feelings to a forum full of strangers is certainly effective therapy. Am I right? Should I tell her about what happened with Nanami? And you, by extension? But when I told her about the D-sword that one time, she hadn't believed me at all. Nah, she lied. Then again, that would be the natural response from anyone sane. So if I were to tell her about Nanami, she'd probably either A, be speechless, or B, just laugh in my face. And if that was true, there really was no point in telling her. All I needed was for her to stay by my side. It would be better to bring the topic up with Kozupi or Sena instead. But weren't you just balking at the prospect of going to help for either of them earlier this episode?
相変わらず汚いね。
Yes, this is the den of the male apocalypse maiden himself. Gaze upon the lewdness of the dojins and the figurines. Mere moments after stepping foot into my base, Rimi muttered that in exasperation. And yet, paradoxically, she seemed to be smiling happily as well. Weird.
変わってないな、この部屋の汚さがまさにタクって感じ。
If you're gonna be like that, then just clean it. Be my guest. With a sigh, I turned on my PC.
ちょっと帰ってくるなりパソコン？友達が来てるんだから少しはおもてなししてあげようっていう気持ちにはならないのかな。
Yeah, sure, but there is one little problem. You're not really my friend, are you?
ねえ、お話ししようよ。
Why should I? I don't even see a pizza slice anywhere. After hitting me with such an unreasonable demand, Rimi sat down on the sofa. I'm gonna go with green. Actually, no, red. Green. I'm feeling indecisive today. If I tried to have a one-on-one conversation with a 3D girl, it would be over in seconds. As much as I'd gotten used to talking to Rimi, since I'd had a lot more chances to do so recently, I still doubted I even lasted 5 minutes. Red! Moreover, my head was already fully occupied with the stuff about Nanami, so I very much didn't feel up for a casual conversation. And so, I resorted to just ignoring her. I sat down in my chair, all while remaining painfully aware of my own worthlessness. You see how it is, don't you? What do you see?
そういう態度なら私帰る。勝手にすれば。
Will do! I sensed Rimi stand up behind me. When I turned around surprised, she was already heading toward the door. I hurriedly called out to stop her, but I was too flustered to get the words out. Right then, Rimi stopped and looked over her shoulder.
妹さんのこと心配。
Mind reader! Get out of my head! That's Koza. My headspace is only my space and Kozapi's space to mess around in. Much as I don't want her to.
どうしてそれを
I hadn't spoken a single word to her about Nanami.
独り言ブツブツ言ってたから。ねえ、私と妹さんどっちが大事？
My sister, naturally. Oh God. The world's worst question to ever get asked. For the win? No, that can't be it in this context. Right? There were women out there who just loved asking nasty questions like that, even though there was no way you could possibly answer them. And that is why you should just cut them out of your life. You'll be a lot happier in the long run if you do. It was like they reveled in completely disregarding the other person's feelings. They only thought of themselves. I repeat, and that's why you should cut people like that out of your life. You'll be happier. I never expected to hear those words in real life. This is exactly what made 3D girls so repulsive. So, in the end, Rimi was just another one of those girls that thought like that, huh? No actual brain cells in there to think any other way? Like you're one to talk about brain cells. Put bluntly, I was disappointed. I was a fool for thinking I could trust her. That I agree with you. I'd always known 3D was no match for 2D. It was time I gave up on hanging out with Rimi for good. I could say something here, but I'm not going to. I don't want to make YouTube angry. Having lost every ounce of interest I'd had in Rimi all at once, I let out an exasperated sigh. Be gone, wench! I'm gonna go grind for a bit. I couldn't be bothered trying to stop her from leaving. Really, I wanted her to leave as soon as possible. And yet, Rimi went on to do something completely unexpected. What, smash one of your figures?
答えて。私か妹さんかどっちか選んで。
What a question to ask somebody. Suddenly, she took out something resembling a fruit knife from her bag, and then she thrust it toward her own wrist. Yay, good idea. I was kind of thinking about now. Some red wine would definitely be a nice little drink to have right now. Hold on, let me get my wine glass. I was completely dumbfounded. I started trembling in terror.
私を選んで。私だけを見て。
Was she threatening me? Had this been her true nature all along? Could it be that she'd been some fucking insane mental case the entire time?
お願い。私を見てよ。
But have you seen Nanami eat a hamburger before? I mean, how could you not look at something so adorable? Seriously.
君は僕だけを見てくれてないじゃないか。
In the heat of the moment, I'd given a serious, non-shitpost response. Even though everyone knew you shouldn't go along with the stuff psychopaths said, especially if it was a threat. I regretted it the moment it came out of my mouth, but it was too late. Well, you can actually go along with some of the things psychopaths say, if you're smart about it. It all depends on the exact situation you're in and the exact psychopath you're dealing with and what they are being psychotic about. And whether or not there is a blunt object you can use nearby.
見てるよ。
Rimi's voice was ice cold. Her eyes were bloodshot. She curved her lips into a cruel smile.
だから邪魔者は排除するの。あなたの妹をさらったのも私だし。
Dun dun dun! You're kidding.
タクに選んでもらうためなら私こんなことだってするよ。
Okay, Miss Criminal Mastermind, I got one question for you then. Where does me getting my own D-sword fit into this scheme of yours? Were you planning to have me do kinky things with it to you or something? And then, Rimi pressed the knife against her wrist, and slowly began to draw it to the right.
やめろ。
やめろって何が？
Stop assaulting my mind with red wine. I want to be sober. When I came back to my senses, I was looking at my monitor, and I heard Rimi's inquisitive voice come from behind me. I hurriedly turned around, only to see her still sitting on the sofa. She was holding a manga in her hand, and was giving me a puzzled look. You looking at my pervy dojin?
タク、顔色悪いけどどうかしたの？
うん。
Oh, you know. Me just... My head's just in the clouds, like usual. What? Had that all been a delusion? God. That was so fucked up.
メールだよ、ボケナス。あ、今の何？
あ、いや。
Wait a second. Rimi had just heard my Seritan notification tone. Oh God, how embarrassing. When I opened my email software, I saw about 3 messages from Grimm telling me to join the chat room. What do you want now? Oh, wait. It's probably the 7th New Gen case, right? Now that I thought about it, I hadn't really chatted much with Grimm recently. We used to talk online pretty much every day. With friends like these, who needs enemies? They aren't even around half the time you need them or want them. But since I've been refraining from playing ESO, it's been around 10 days since we last talked. Well, then I guess in this case this isn't really necessarily his fault, but mine. Hey, Nineheart-kun! I've been waiting for you! Because there's another nude gen! I would like something nude rather than new, right now, if I'm being honest. Nude sounds fun. New, not so much. I hear the latest new thing involved 3 people getting torn apart. ASCII art. A picture drawn from an online forum using only the characters and symbols included in the ASCII character set. Also known as text-based art. Oh boy. It returns. What are you even on about? Insert ASCII art here. New gen, dude! What the fuck do you think I'm on about? And you had to go and kill my hopes. Again. No nudie for Neo today, huh? Fuck you too. How exactly did we get from new gen to nude gen? New gen, new gen, new gen, new generation. Come on, that shit's obvious. Use common sense for fuck's sake. More importantly, there's a 7th case. Well, Rimi, there's no nudes. Likely having noticed my gasp, Rimi stood up and walked over to me. She peeked over my shoulder at the monitor. It happened again. Another new generation. How long was this damn thing gonna go on for? Was I next? Would I be the victim of the 8th case? The 9th? I think you of all people know that's a lie, Rimi. Except you. Except you. Justifiably paranoid. That's completely baseless encouragement. You can't calm me down with such weak sauce shit, Rimi. Anxiety aside, Grimm is pretty much the new gen news guy at this point. He's the news anchor. I'll just show myself out of the room once this episode's done and over with, because I gotta finish this before I walk out in shame at my bad sense of humor. He'd been keeping me in the loop about basically everything. Even now, he was going out of his way to link a bunch of blog posts and news articles about it. Seemed like he really wanted me to take a look. Biting my lip, I reluctantly clicked on the first link. Seventh new gen case dubbed the Dokyun puzzle. On November 4th at approximately 4:50 a.m., the dead bodies of 3 men were discovered hanging from an iron pole near a railroad in Shibuya, Tokyo. The deceased have been identified as 19-year-old Fujita Kuhei, unemployed, 20-year-old Anzawa Saburo, a college student, and 19-year-old Takagi Ryu. a construction worker. According to police, the bodies were severed in half at the waist, but the wounds do not indicate the use of any sharp weaponry. So I completely misread the torn apart thing. Oh, you mean they were literally torn apart? Oh, shit. Furthermore, the bond halves of each of the bodies were interchanged with one another, forming new combinations which were tightly sewn back together with thread. Carved into each body were the letters D, Q, and N respectively. The police are investigating the possibility that this may be a message left behind by the culprit. Whoops. On the popular anonymous online message board, images of the incident were leaked prior to the official coverage of the events. It had already been accepted as the 7th case of the New Generation Madness, aka New Gen, and was christened the Dokyun puzzle due to the manner in which the top and bottom halves of the corpses were recombined. Notably, on @channel, the term Dokyun means an individual lacking basic common sense. Regarding the serial New Gen cases, the mourning families of the victims have been taking legal action against some particularly offensive posts on @channel, a move which has sparked fierce debate online. What the? His body was glowing. Mysterious eyewitness testimony you won't see on TV. Those are all about my TV appearance. My body was glowing? New gen for the win! Wheat! Wait, it says Dokyun? LMAO, literally zero connection to the other cases. These are dumb as fuck. You trying to say it's one of us anti-Dokyuns? With their lower bodies swapped around and shit, it's like a puzzle. But with corpses. If only I could trade my upper body for some alphas, LMAO. Why not an upper? Personally, I would think it would be. Personally, I think you would benefit more from having a T-shaped torso with muscle mass. That would definitely get you some attention. Our Esper boy Nishijo will sniff out the perp for us anytime now. Lol. New gen bearer.
今日午前4時50分ごろ、東京都渋谷区の線路沿いで男性3人の他殺死体が鉄柱に吊り下げられているのを通りかかった新聞販売員の男性が発見しました。警察の調べによりますと、殺されたのはいずれも渋谷区に住む無職藤田康平さん、大学生の安沢三郎さん、とび職の高木亮さんの3人です。3人とも胴体の部分が切断され、それぞれの上半身と下半身が別々に入れ替えられて糸で縫合されていました。3人の額にはそれぞれ謎の傷がつけられており、警察では犯人からのメッセージではないかとみて調べています。渋谷では2ヶ月ほど前から猟奇殺人事件が頻発しており、警察では今回の事件も同一犯による犯行の可能性が高いとみて捜査を続けています。
At the end of the news clip, photographs of the 3 victims were shown. Alright, so who are they? I had seen those faces before. The 3 thugs, right?
あいつらだ。
知ってるの？
昨日僕に絡んできた。
Well, looks like I was right on the money with this one. I'd given them my wallet. but they kicked my ass anyway. I then fallen unconscious, and when I woke up, Kosupi was beside me. The three of them had been collapsed on the ground, covered in blood. I dug my wallet out from my pocket and stared at it intently. When I came to, Kosupi had been carrying it, and she'd given it back to me soon after. Could the person who killed those three be? No, definitely not. The last time I'd seen them, they had been beaten to a pulp and covered in blood, but they hadn't been cut in half or anything. Which would mean they had been killed after Kosupi and I had left. It had to have been Shogun. That wrinkly asshole was trying to provoke me. Damn it. He really was committed to driving me insane. Just how far was he willing to go? I wanted to vomit. I clutched my stomach as it churned in pain. Was I next? Would I be next to die? Well, seeing as how they want to awaken some world-changing power within you, according to what they say, I think killing you, at least at this stage, wouldn't really help them. I mean, the only reason that I think he kills us in the bad ending we could potentially get for failing to perceive the D sword was, well, he wanted to confirm whether or not we could actually perceive the sword, because if we didn't, if we failed to perceive it, then there pretty much would be no chance. There'd pretty much be no chance of them being able to provoke us into grabbing said sword and spurring us to helping them achieve their world-changing objective. Be kind of impossible to grab a sword if we absolutely refuse or unable to actually see it, you know what I mean? So at that point, we pretty much would be useless to their plans. So at that point, why bother keeping me around? But since we were able to perceive it, I don't think he's gonna kill us, at least as of yet. Someone tells me he's far from done when it comes to getting us to try to get our D sword. A hand reached out from behind me and pushed the power button on the monitor. The screen went pitch black. Did you just blind me to the outside world, Rimi? Without my consent? I'll poke you in the eye for that.
落ち着いて。気にすることないよ。ただの偶然だってきっと。
I would say that you're wrong. There is plenty to worry about, but you probably actually already know that, don't you? Why was Rimi acting so ridiculously optimistic? This couldn't possibly just be a series of coincidences.
それよりお腹空いちゃった。
Then you can go ahead and eat my shoes.
ねえ、私が行きつけのお店があるんだけど、そこにご飯食べに行かない？
You got a problem with shoes?
安くて美味しいんだよ。私が保証する。
I hear they're full of vitamins and minerals.
まあ、お客さんはおじさんが多いから、私みたいのが一人で行くのはちょっと恥ずかしいけどね。あ、それと駅の中に入らなくちゃいけないんだった。渋谷駅のコーナーにあるから。
This place better offer ice cream and pizza, which you still owe me.
ちなみに山手線内回りと外回りのホームどっちにもあるんだけど、私は断然内回りの方が好き。
Food, huh? I really didn't have much of an appetite right now. It felt like Shogun was holding a knife straight to my throat. Like he was saying, I can kill you whenever I please. Please. Just let me go. What had I done to deserve this? I don't know, exist? I couldn't take it anymore. That's not me being mean or hyperbolic or anything like that. I mean, you have a special power, so yeah, you the problem might actually be because you exist. I mean, hell, Rimi certainly seems to think so. Us being apparently dangerous and all. Well, I was wondering when we would finally see you. Or at least that's what I would say. But we won't be, I'm going to go ahead and cut things off here, and we can properly follow up on what's been going on with you in the next episode. So, Rimi's finally back, and she's lying to our faces about stuff, as expected. Misami-kun is finally speaking to us again. Probably because Rimi was the first one to approach. A little chicken shit. And now I got some serious head scratchers to worry about when it comes to Nanami and her mysteriously bandaged wrist. Along with, well, pretty much everything else that happened in this episode. It really feels like we're reaching towards a climax of some sort here. It's gonna be big. I can already tell. Whatever it is. Whatever it may be, hopefully the damage isn't permanent. So, that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Chaos Head Noah. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Take care.